My name is Dominic Raeside, and I head the mediation service here at Family Law and Partnership. And I'm one of 3 mediators who are trained and accredited to meet with children as part of the child inclusive mediation process. Child inclusive mediation is where the issues being discussed in mediation are child related, and where the mediator meets with the child or young person so that their voice is heard. So many mediators who have additional experience have met with children, in my case for 30 years, but I'm a family therapist as well. And prior to that, as part of the court process, I met with children to write reports to advise the judiciary in contested matters. But mediation is all about keeping it out of court and about parents making good decisions about their children. And child inclusive mediation is simply a vehicle for their child or their children's voice to be heard as part of that process. Well, the requirement to meet with children as part of child inclusive mediation changed a number of years ago following a report by the Ministry of Justice named The Voice of the Child. And that led to a change in the code of practice for family mediators by its professional body, the Family Mediation Council, and set standards for training and accreditation, and requires all mediators to offer the opportunity for children to be seen where they're 10 and over in mediation. Do parents agree to their children being seen? Sometimes. They might be anxious at the prospect of their child or children being seen by a professional. They might be worried that the other parent has put them under undue influence. But really, seeing children in mediation is not about evidence building. It's not about taking sides. The mediator is having a conversation, a chat, if you like, with the children about family life. It's about giving the child a voice, and that voice being heard by someone who's completely neutral. And for those views then to enhance the discussions being had by the parents with the mediator. So where there is a sibling group, I often will start by meeting with the children together to explain my role and discuss issues to do with confidentiality. And then I would usually speak to the children individually as part of that process. So the sorts of issues that are dealt with in child inclusive mediation are usually to do with the amount of time that the children spend with both parents. So an example would be where the parents are separated and the children are primarily living with the mother and perhaps seeing the father on alternate weekends. And after a period of time, the father might be saying, well, I want shared care. I want the children sort of 50% of the time. So that might be an issue. Other issues would include things like secondary school choices, issues to do with perhaps the children with whom they spend more time wanting to move homes, which will have ramifications for the logistics of travelling between their homes, or even one parent wanting to return to their family of origin, having separated or divorced from the other parent. Does meeting with children put them in a difficult position? Yes, potentially, but one has to remind oneself of the alternative. The alternative is that a parent might make an application to court, and in that process, the child will be seen by a CAFCAS officer, which is like the social work arm to the family courts, and will be asked very direct questions, which often put them in an impossible position where they feel they're having to choose between their parents. And that will be then written up in a report, which will be cherry-picked by the parents' lawyers to make their case. So it puts the child right in the middle of their parents' battle. Now, in mediation, as I said, it's all about keeping it out of court and empowering parents to make good decisions about their children. And in that context, it's not about evidence. It's about giving the child or children a voice, because often when they talk to their individual parents, they'll say slightly different things because they're being loyal to that individual parent at that moment. Whereas with me, as a neutral person who's met their parents and who's only on the side of trying to help things go better, children get it. And they get it that part of the underlying principle of mediation is to help parents work more cooperatively together as separated parents. And as we know from research, that's highly indicative of good outcomes for children where parents can adopt a more collaborative stance. The other important difference is that as a mediator, I'm not allowed to put anything in writing. So it's not about evidence building or cherry picking any report that I would write. I'm not allowed to. So it's about giving verbal feedback to parents so that they can make good decisions for their children. But in giving that feedback, I always check with the child or children if there's anything that they've said to me that is confidential, and I would respect that when feeding back to parents. Hearing the voice of a child is not about children making decisions. I think decision making is made by parents, but that decision making needs to be based on what's in the best interests of the child or children. And for them to be properly informed and think and reflect on that, it's very, very helpful for their child's voice to be heard by a neutral third party. The sort of feedback that I've received often comes about because the next meeting, having met with the children, will be with the parents, for me to feed back to them what I learnt from talking with their children, acknowledging any issues of confidentiality. And one of the questions I often ask is, well, what did your children say about their meeting with me? And often parents say, well, they seemed to enjoy it. It went on longer than we thought it would. And I think that's because I just have a chat. I'm not putting them in tricky situations or asking them binary questions where they can't be loyal to both parents simultaneously. And where implicit in our conversation is this notion of their parents getting on better and working more cooperatively with each other so that the children can transition between their two homes easier. And I think children appreciate that. And that's reflected in the feedback that I get from parents.